Hey everyone, hope you're having a good weekend. It's Matt here. It's been a while since I've done a contest, but I saw that the channel Andy's Vinyl Den, he's having his 200 subscriptions contest, so I thought that would be fun to go ahead and enter. So first off, congratulations Andy on the subs. Hope you get more. He's got a good channel. If you haven't seen him, it's Andy's Vinyl Den. Go over there, check it out, and like his videos and subscribe and all that good stuff. Andy's contest calls for you to pick 10 albums that in your opinion are perfect albums and show them here on the videos. So at first I thought, not get me wrong, it's a great contest idea, but I thought I'd take a skip on that one because I just didn't want to come on here with the same old, showing a Beatles album and a Kinks album and an album by the Jam and Piper at the Gates of Dawn and all the regular usual suspects there. But then I thought, well, there's a lot of other albums that are outside of the canon that are really great albums. And so it's kind of fun because I decided to do it, and it sent me digging through my record collection to pull out some stuff that was non-Beatles, non-Rolling Stones, and so forth. Stayed away from those things. So I decided to go ahead and do it. Also, I don't know, however you want to define perfect album, because really there's some Beatles albums, there's maybe Purple Rain, there's a few albums that perfect and that every song on there is really good to great. Those albums are pretty few and far between. Even there's a lot of albums that might have a song or two that you love the rest of the album, but song or two where you think, it's okay, or don't really like that one. So it's kind of hard to get a perfect album. So I kept the standards pretty loose. I kept it close enough for horseshoes and government work type standard. So most of these albums, I guess some of them I love every song on them, and some of them there might be a song or two that I'm just okay or not crazy about. But I figure batting 85-90% on all of them, and that's close enough for this. So yeah, also I watched quite a few other people have done entries in this, watched a lot of videos of those, and have enjoyed seeing other people's what their take on 10 perfect albums is. So yeah, let's get started. I've got 3 of these just on CD because I don't have them on vinyl. The rest are on vinyl, but we'll start with vinyl. Um, and again, no Beatles, no Kinks, no Jam, no Rolling Stones or so forth and so on. None of the regular stuff, which I could easily have done, but thought that'd be kind of dull because I've sort of done that before. First up, and these are in no particular order. These are just I just dug through my collection and found 10 records that so yeah, the thing on 50s records is before the Beatles came along and started sort of doing albums as a statement or art or a theme. That records before that were really just hit single or two and then a bunch of filler, which I guess was true in a lot of cases. Certainly wasn't true of the Sinatra albums of the 50s. But this one, there's really, this is his first album, and it's not an original. I wish it was. This is a Record Store Day release from a few years ago on colored vinyl, but it sounds really incredibly great. Uh, not a bad song on here, and I mean this is just hits the top. And when it comes to 50s rock and roll, I think probably Buddy Holly and Little Richard are the top of the mountain there, and then after that, you'd have Chuck Berry and Elvis and the rest of the guys. But just incredible. Got a lot of punch to this particular pressing. Great songs, you can't argue with it. Um, some of these were hit singles, some of them weren't, but they're great songs. So yeah, one of the original architects of rock and roll, Little Richard there. Let's get a 50s album in there. Now we'll jump forward a few decades. This is from 1984, Husker Du's Zen Arcade, double album. The gatefolds, the lyrics there. Yeah, this is sort of latter day punk rock, band from Minnesota, and rock and roll punk rock. They kind of stretched out on this album. Then there's There's some just regular rock and roll. There's some folk. There's some really guitar heavy stuff. There's various and different types of style. They actually got some grief from their fans on this, saying, you know, double albums and going into other styles of music isn't punk rock, which is of course ridiculous because punk rock is doing whatever, following your muse and doing what you want to do, more than a straight jacket set of rules. So yeah, it's got its heavy moments, it's got its lighter moments. Really great record from 1984 that deserves more attention. So funny thing about Husker Du is I love this album, but I've got some of their other albums, and I'm not that crazy about them. They've all got their moments and some great songs on the other ones, but that's really the only one that does it for me as a whole album. We'll jump forward even a little further. Never been a, or not never. I'm not a fan of new music of the last 30 years or so, but and I think I've shown this before, but I'll show it again. This is Raphael Saadiq's Stone Rolling. Love soul music of the 60s and 70s, and this is sounds a lot like that, but it's not just a someone in the 2000s, came out in 2011 or so. Yeah, 2011. So it's not someone in the 20 teens, I guess that's the decade we're in, trying to sound like a 60s or a 70s soul band. It's it does sound like that, but it sounds modern at the same time, and it's his own take and his own spin on it. It's not just a copy. Really great music, and fortunately, it doesn't break into rap stuff in the middle of the songs to ruin them. But just great stuff. If you love 60s and 70s soul, go on YouTube or go buy this record and give it a shot. I think you'll really like it. It's great soul pop songs, catchy as can be, and just a great album. We'll jump back into the 70s. This is 1971. I believe it's 1971. Can Tago Mago, I guess that's how you say it, or Tago Mago. Never was sure. German band. A lot of what they call krautrock, which came out in the late 60s, early to mid 70s. Sort of guitar heavy experimental music, and but also very friendly on the ears, very catchy, and very listenable. Just great, some weird, odd stuff, but it's catchy as can be. This is their third or fourth album. Really, all their albums up through like 1974 or so were essential. But a great band that was around in the 70s, had kind of a cult following in America, but never really had hits or anything, unfortunately. They deserve to be heard. If you like Pink Floyd, if you like just guitar music, check this out. You probably like it. We'll jump back to the 60s. This is another record store day pickup from a few years ago, but Sam Cooke, John Lennon, Sam Cooke, and Otis Redding be my top male vocalists of all time. Can't go wrong with Sam Cooke, and this thing's just not a bad song on here. Some of them are hits that you still hear on the oldies radio station. Some of them don't really hear on the radio, but they're worth listening to. One of the best singers of all time. Early 60s soul music. It's a tragedy there that he died in 64, because I think he was just had already done incredible work, and he was just sort of coming to his own. So it's would have been really interesting to see what he would have done had he not got shot there in 64. Okay, we'll go back to the 80s. This is 1985. Don't Stand Me Down, Dexy's Midnight Runners. This is it's not actually their last album, but it's their last album of their original run. They had Searching for the Young Soul Rebels in 1980, which I don't know if the album went to number one, but the single Gino went to number one in England. And then the Tu Rae album in 82, which of course, Come On Eileen, everyone knows that went number one all around the world. This didn't come out till 1985, 3 years later, and by that time people had pretty much forgotten about the band, so I don't think this really charted. It didn't over here in America. I don't really think it did in England either, unfortunately, because as good as their first two albums are, and they're both worth getting, both incredible, this is their masterpiece. And there's only, what, 7 songs on here, but just an incredible album, one of the best albums of the 80s. Definitely, and I think this was 85, like I said, definitely the best album of 1985 by far, which wasn't really that great of a year for music. But even if it had been a great year for music, this would still be up there near the top or at the top. Um, Again, they're one of those bands that if you only know Come On Eileen and you like that song or you don't like that song, a lot of people, you know, think it's annoying. A lot of people really like it, but um, if you just know them, you don't know Dexys, because there's so much more to the band. And I've said this 100 times. It's if you never heard the Beatles and someone played Yellow Submarine and you thought, okay, what's the big deal? Well, you're not hearing the Beatles. So definitely worth checking out. A great album. We'll do the CDs last, I guess. But last vinyl album I have here is this is 1970, I believe. It might be 71, but I think it might be 71. Uh, Free Your Mind by Funkadelic. This is their second album. Eddie Hazel's on here, great guitarist. He's up there with any Jimi Hendrix, maybe just short of Jimi Hendrix, but any Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, all that stuff. Not that they're not good, but he's right up there with them, if not better. An incredible soul, funk, rock and roll album. Probably, arguably, one of the best, if not the best, rock and roll band of the 70s, in my opinion. Funkadelic were, based on their first 5 or 6 albums, all of which are essential. Soul and funk too. You don't really think of them as rock and roll, but you listen to these early albums and they certainly were, and they put pretty much anyone else to shame. So they're sort of a logical outgrowth of James Brown and Sly and the Family Stone, taken a step further or so. Great band, great album. Definitely worth checking out their first. Well, pretty much all of them are good, but definitely worth checking out their first 4 or 5 albums at least, 5 or 6 albums at least. Dexys, which I said was their final album of their original run. They did come back with a reunion album in like 2012 or something, a double album, which is actually pretty good. Surprising, because usually those reunion things after years away don't work out so well, but it's pretty good. It's not as good as the first 3 in the 80s, but it's worth checking out too. Okay, we go to 1967. Don't have this on vinyl, unfortunately. Forever Changes by Love. 67, arguably the best year of music in the modern age ever. And it's chock full of Sgt. Pepper, Between the Buttons, Who Sell Out, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Moby Grape's debut, Surrealistic Pillow by Jefferson Airplane. This is right there with that bunch. Just an incredible Baroque pop rock and roll album. This is their third album. Their first 2 are really good too and worth checking out. After this one, they have an album called For Sale, which is okay, and after that it gets a little dicey and iffy. This is just a sort of a one-off masterpiece, and it's very, if you like Sgt. Pepper and you like psychedelia, this is a little darker side of psychedelia. Better than the Doors debut, probably, when that's a great album, or at least right there with it. Love Forever Changes, definitely want to check that one out. And there's really not a bad song on that one. And so we'll go, we've only got 2 left. Go back to the 80s, 1984. This one has really good, brings back really good memories of when this came out, because 84 was a really good year for me, but just a great album otherwise. Their third album, and sort of really their last album. They came back in 99, 2000 and did a reunion album. Wasn't really all that great. Had a song or two on it that's okay. Their first album, Beauty and the Beat, that's the one that had the big hits and went to #1. We Got the Beat and Our Lips Are Sealed. That's the one everyone remembers now. It's a good album. It's got some really good songs. Their second album, Vacation, of course, has some good stuff. All three of their original albums are really good, but this one's the best of the bunch, in my opinion. You got the 1-2 punch of Head Over Heels and Turn to You to open up the album. You got You Thought, which gives you kind of a breather, it's a good song. And then you got Beneath the Blue Sky, which might be my favorite song of the Go-Go's. Forget That Day, I'm the Only One. It just goes right through. It's just not a bad song on here. And the shame that they couldn't keep it together and broke up. Probably, uh, I guess, as far as female artists of the 80s, I'd have to give it to Chrissie Hynde. I would probably have shown the Pretenders' first album, other than the fact that I unfortunately don't have it anymore on vinyl or CD. Used to have it. That'd probably be the best female artist album of the 80s. But after the Pretenders, I'd probably go the Go-Go's, then Blondie, then the Bangles, then whatever else. But yeah, I always love this, and just haven't listened to this in forever. But when I do hear it, it just takes me back to summer of '84, when just a great time in life. But that aside, it's just a great, great pop album. They managed to sound, I love the old 60s girl group stuff, the Shangri-Las, the Ronettes, and all that. They have a little bit of that sound, but they also have the 80s sound, and they managed to mix both of those really well together. They've got a lot good punch and catchy pop sound to them without being silly, because a lot of the pop stuff of the 80s was, and certainly beyond the 80s, was even worse. But they managed to just hit that right balance of good songs and good music. So Talk Show by the Go-Go's, I think that's their best album. I don't think there's a bad song on that. And last but not least, since these aren't really in order, and I haven't listened to this in a long time, it meant a lot more to me back when I was, teenager, early 20s. I still love it, but being old, I guess, I don't know. I still listen to the Clash and the Jam and get stuff out of them as much. I still get stuff out of this. I just don't listen to it as much anymore. But and I swore I had this on vinyl, but I looked around and couldn't find it. So maybe it's tucked away back there somewhere. Anyway, this 1977. This came out, I believe, and yeah. So just a great wake-up call for rock, which was in the doldrums by the mid '70s. It gotten kind of bloated and boring and corporate and arena rock stuff. A lot of the bands that were on the radio, especially where I'm in Fort Worth, were Kansas and Styx and Peter Frampton and the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac, and I don't like any of that stuff. Apologies to anyone that does. I'm not, but just it wasn't for me. This made rock and roll matter again. Made it fun. Made it put some life back into it, I think. And so, great album, and really not a bad song on there. And so that's it. Yeah. All right, Andy. Well, congratulations on the subs. Hope to get plenty more. Enjoy your videos. Enjoyed watching everyone else's videos on their contest entries. And have a good weekend. I've got a Beach Boys album on deck that I might get to this weekend, might not. Just depends on how time goes. Anyway, have fun.